All right, everyone, the red light is on and we are recording. This is Mark back for another episode of the Veteran Semi-Professional. So today's interview episode, and I have a very special guest today. So normally when I have a guest on this show for an interview, it's a veteran and we're talking about their life after the military. We're talking about their transition and their career, post uniform to kind of show you what are the options that are out there. How do I get started? Once I take off the uniform, put my hands back in my pockets and start growing my hair out a little bit. Okay. Today's guest doesn't quite fall in that category, but we're having a lot of super cool things to talk about. He's the first pro athlete I've had on the show, which is super cool. So Jeff and I are going to talk a little bit about transitioning from pro sports, probably bring up some parallels between that and the military. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit about buying businesses in the world of entrepreneurship through acquisition. So Jeff, if you can take a minute and introduce yourself, man, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I think this is a great podcast. You're speaking to a bunch of people out there that are nervous about what's next, and I've been there many times over. So appreciate what you're doing. Yeah. So play NFL football player. You hit that. A husband to my wife Taryn, a father to my three kids, Jensen, Drew, and our baby boy Jace. Um, Move back and forth with that crew, a couple times a year with my job. We live in Orlando in the off season. And then, I've been on a number of teams, most recently the last 2 years with the Houston Texans. So that traveling circus goes back and forth. But yeah, that's me, football player, and happy to be here today.
And if for anyone listening, if you're wondering, Mark, how the heck did you get a guy who's playing the NFL on the show? Really, so I saw Jeff on a Twitter thread about buying businesses and just like said, okay, this is a cool story. Reached
Yeah.
out to him and he was super cool. I was like, yeah, man, this sounds awesome. Let's have a chat.
Yeah. When I first started getting into this, buying business world, SMB, ETA, all the acronyms, I didn't realize how powerful Twitter is. And, I talked to my parents, talked to my friends, and they say, hey, how'd you meet this guy? And, at first I would hesitate and say, well, I met him through Twitter, but now it's kind of normalized in my world. So the catfishing stigma is out of my head.
Yeah, I would say for anyone out there, and in particular, folks in the military, we can be a little reticent to use social media, especially acquiring uniform, especially out and proud. There's security clearances and security challenges that can be out there associated with that. And some people can also just be a little reticent from it. So I know I was on Twitter for a while, and I was kind of mostly finding like what Twitter brings you, which is like a lot of
Right.
politics stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like a toxic dumpster fire corner of the internet. I have no desire to be here. Got
Yeah.
off Twitter for months, came back on and found like the small business Twitter world. And I'm like, these
Yeah.
people rock. This is awesome. This is a great little place to be. And, I was just talking with a friend I went to college with who's also looking for a business to buy. And, we were both commenting like we probably learned more in 3 months on Twitter than we did at 2 years of business school because there's
Yeah.
just so much good information being put out there.
Yeah. No, it's great. And like you said, there's a lot of negativity out there, and you know I had to look at who I was following, what I wanted my feed to look like, and it looks a lot different today than it did in the past.
Yeah. Well, before we get too much into talking about ET and everything, I'm kind of curious. You're pretty early in the off season here. What does a NFL player do during the off season?
Yeah, so it's wild. You go from half your year is full on football, right? From the second you wake up to the second you go to sleep, it's either football meetings or practice or weightlifting or conditioning or nutrition or stretching. It's just all day, every day, with one off day a week. So everything's like super laid out for you. You're super busy. You don't really have the bandwidth to think about anything outside of football and your family. And then you get to the off season, and there's no type of structure. It's on you as a professional to keep your body right. It's on you as a professional to maintain your skill level, and that doesn't take all day, right? It only takes a couple hours, a handful of times a week, and you have a ton of other time to do what you want to do. A lot of it is spent with family and friends, and rest and rest and relaxation. But someone like me who has interests in other worlds, my mind starts to wander when I have that much time.
I'm recollecting coming back. I think it was from my second deployment, and when you're deployed, you're working 7 days a week. It is balls to the wall, 18 hours a day. You're going full tilt. And I come back, and the first couple of weeks, our command would usually give us like half days. So like we'd be cutting out of the office at noon or something. And I remember that first day getting home. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, what do I do with my hands right now? like
Yeah, you sound it's
I don't know what to do
like
right
in
now.
your head when they tell you have an off day, you're like super excited, but then you're like, well, what the heck do I do? Like, am I excited or would I rather be at work since I have nothing to do? It's one of those weird deals.
I think just because people might be curious a little bit right now, like what does your training schedule look like? How often are you, I'm sure you're going to the gym every day and kind of doing conditioning, but like how often are you
Yeah.
doing, skills practice, if you will?
Yeah. So I have a gym, like a formal gym that I train at with a trainer, and we're going through a very organized workout from, a stretching regiment to a movement prep to the movement segment of my workout to like my weightlifting segment of my workout. And then, you have your shake and your recovery bar and, make sure your body's staying healthy as well. And then I'll go from there to go throw, and I do that 2 times a week. And I throw to my dad. By the way, it's hard to find 30-year-old dudes willing to run routes during the middle of the day on Tuesday. So I just throw to my dad. He's been doing it since I was a little kid, catching for me. So that's been a fun thing over my career is to throw to him. But anyways, I do that. I do that 2 times a week, and then the other 2 times, um, I'll train by myself, no trainer. He'll send me a program, and I'll work out. At the gym in my neighborhood.
Super cool. And it's super cool about your dad too. I'm sure at
Yeah,
this point he's probably got some like iron hands just from catching your passes for so many years.
yeah, it's funny. He catches the ball really well. He doesn't move as well as he used to, but he catches it really well. And we just throw in the park in my neighborhood, and it's funny seeing like the ladies out on their midday walk, like watching two grown men throwing a football. Like it's kind of funny to just see the reactions.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're also not just totally casually throwing too. Like you're
Right.
probably doing some very deliberate stepping and everything, and they're also probably
Yeah.
thinking like, what are these guys doing right now? Like this is not just like a casual game of catch going on.
Yeah, it's like you said. There's some probably to an outsider some weird looking drills that we got going on over there, but it's worked for me, and I'll keep doing it as long as either my arm works or as long as he can catch me up.
Right, right. Well, cool, man. So kind of first question here about we'll talk a little bit about like the transition from pro sports to
Yeah.
afterlife, if you will. What's the average career length for an NFL player?
Yeah, so the average is around 3 years. So the NFL, what we say is stands for not for long, is what they drill in our heads.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, at some point, I always tell folks who are thinking about getting out of the military, I'm like, hey, whether you do 3 or 30 years, eventually you're going to get out and you're going to have a
Yeah,
lot of life still ahead of you, right?
yeah.
And the NFL sounds, very much the same way. Most people are not going to have a Tom Brady career and staying for 20 years,
Yeah.
right? Most people
Mhm.
are going to do a couple years and move on to the next thing. It's like you're still playing, thankfully, and I know you're super enjoying it still, but kind of how do you think about, life post NFL, like post playing football?
Yeah, so I mean, growing up, I was all sports. That's what we did. My parents poured a lot of time, energy, and money into developing me and my brother as athletes, and not just because they wanted it for themselves or they wanted us to be like these pro players. They did, but they could tell we really enjoyed it. They could tell that we were growing in other ways besides just as athletes through sports. So that's all you think about, right? Like you don't think about what you want to do when you're done playing because you just keep playing. It just doesn't stop. And you get closer and closer, and your goal of being an NFL player, in my case, becomes like a reality. When you're a kid, it's kind of like, yeah, I want to be a player when I grow up, and then it's like, oh man, like he might actually be a pro player, and you you spend even more and more time dedicating to your craft, to get there. And then when you get there, you're fully submerged, right? You're fully in where your feet are. I'm an NFL player now. I want to, contribute, make the team. I want to contribute to the team, and I want to play as long as possible. So you don't think about anything else. And then that off season hits. My first off season, I was like, wow, this was a roller coaster ride. First of all, I thought I was going to get drafted in the third round. I got drafted in the sixth round. I thought I was going to play for the team that drafted me. I got cut after a few months and ended up playing with another team that first year. So I'm like, holy crap, I lasted a year, got a nice little paycheck for year one. And I thought, I don't know how many years I'll be able to do this, right? Like, I had already gotten cut, within a year of being in
Right.
the NFL. And luckily landed on my feet with another organization. But that first off season, I started to go to work. Like, what do I actually want to do? Even though I don't have to do it right now, I'm going to start networking. I'm going to put some feelers out there and figure out, where I can provide for, my wife at the time, but also enjoy what I'm doing. So started to do some research and learn a little bit about the world.
Yeah. Something I'm kind of curious about, just a personal question. Was there a moment when you were playing when you realized like, oh, I actually might have a shot to go pro? Like this might actually be a reality for me.
Yeah, so I was always really good. I was the highest recruited quarterback in the country coming out of high school. So I mean, it was always a reality. My size was there, my athletic ability was there, my skill level was there. So it was always a reality. It was just, is he going to stay healthy, and is he going to, live up to the potential? And early on in my college career, both of those things didn't happen. I got hurt, and I didn't play that well when I got opportunities at the University of Florida. And luckily more opportunities came my way and took advantage of them. And, I'm staring at year 8 in the teeth now. So it's been a great run, and super thankful for the opportunity. And, still think about, life after football, but my thought processes are a lot different than after year one, or, maybe even during college whenever I wasn't playing well.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking back to your description of just like the roller coaster first year
Mm-hmm.
you had, right? And for this audience, I'm sure some people are kind of sensing some parallels. And you know, you walk into a recruiter's office and they tell you this, like, oh, this is gonna be the great job you're gonna have, and it's wonderful. And then you get to basic training and it's something totally different, and you thought you were going to go to
Yeah.
this base and it's some other base, and like it's just kind of it's the uncertainty of just how the system works, right? And I only just bring that up to kind of give people a sense of that experience. A lot of like mechanics and everything are maybe a little bit different, but people are going through difficult challenges and transition periods as well, albeit in different categories.
Yeah, definitely. Uncertainty is a major part of life in the NFL. Whether you've been in the league for 1 year or 10, it's you never know what a team's agenda is and where you fit into their plan. And everybody is disposable.
Yeah, yeah. I think we also get that feeling a little bit. Well, Jeff, when did you first stumble upon the idea of buying a business?
Yeah, so I talked about, year one, thinking about what do I want to do, what job do I want to take. At that time, it was like, who do I want to work for, right? And I've gone from the W-2 mindset to the more entrepreneurial mindset, and it was kind of the same path as a lot of people. You read Robert Kiyosaki, and it opens your mind.
The the
And
the
that was
the, the gateway drug to entrepreneurism, as I say.
that's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
yeah.
So I got into real estate. I could wrap my mind around, buying a business, or I'm sorry, buying a building on my own time, on my own dime, and buy a business, but businesses in my head, buy a building, put some money into it, sell it for more than you invested into it. Like, I could wrap my mind around that, and I had enough dollars in the bank to be able to buy like a small house with no debt, and I didn't understand debt at the time, so I didn't want to take on debt. So I've done like 14 or 15 transactions in the past 6 years, and saw some really good returns. Enjoyed some tax benefits along the way, but over the last few years, I really I wanted to be a real estate guy day to day when I'm done. but the operations of a building are a lot different than operations of a business. And I started to look at more than just the money, and a little bit more into how I would enjoy my professional time. And I love working with people. So I figured buying businesses was the closest thing to real estate, and the operations are just with people rather than with paint and a new floor.
I think that's a great way to frame it. And I've had a couple of people on the show who are real estate investors and just love it, right?
Yep.
And I've also kind of like gone down the same rabbit hole, but probably very similar path to you in many ways, of exploring that. And I never got the bug of like, man, this really interests me. Like, this is like where I want to spend time. And like the people that I know that have been, very successful in real estate, like they just love it. They can just nerd
Yeah.
out on like talking about a
Yeah.
deal, and this is what I'm going to do to the kitchen. And like, this is how like my cap rate, they just love it. They just love it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just doesn't interest me. It just really doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
To me at this point, like buying and investing in real estate is like buying a bond, right? Or like, you know, investing in the stock market. It's just super passive. Don't really care. I'll take my check and move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's people who view investing in businesses the same way. But I love the idea of contributing with people that I want to be around towards providing a service, providing a product, and providing a really good place for people to work. And I'm all in on that as a career choice whenever I'm done.
yeah. So talk to me a little bit about kind of just like your discovery phase of like the mechanics of how all this
Yeah.
works and everything, because I'm sure, you're probably not too much further along. I think there are probably some people on the show who this still might be a new idea to them, and they're just trying to figure out, how do I kind of get started? How does like a basic structure of this thing work? Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit more just how you learned about the mechanics of this process?
Yeah. So I mean, once you know that like buying a business is a thing, like I didn't even know you could buy a business until like a year ago. I just assumed a business was this like crazy robot or something, but it's, all businesses are just
Yeah.
groups of people. But once you learn that you can buy businesses, and that a normal person like you or me can like actually buy them. Once you like get that mindset, it's all about just educating yourself. And there's so many ways to do it. Through Twitter, that's a great way to do it. Through other people that you see on Twitter, that you hear on podcasts, reach out to them, network. What have you done that's worked? What do you stay away from that doesn't work? And there's a lot of great people in the Twitter world that are willing to pour into new searchers and new people in the space. So I think the network of people has really helped me out. They've guided me in the right direction, with books, with podcasts, and with certain people to follow and threads to follow.
Yeah, yeah. I'll make a quick plug just because I had him on the show last week. But Ben Tigliar, he's awesome guy on Twitter, and he just puts out some of the most densely impactful threads you could
Yep.
possibly find, of just straight spitting knowledge on like, you can just follow these steps one by one, and like you will make things happen for yourself. It's amazing.
Yeah. So tell me if I'm wrong. Is Ben out of Austin, Texas?
I do believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So I reached out to Ben a little bit ago to connect with my brother, who we'll be searching together, because he's in Austin as well. So I'll have to check in with Jason to see how his conversation with Ben went.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. He was pretty approachable too. Pretty easy guy to get hold of.
Yeah.
Um, Reciprocal. Yeah. And I'll kind of come back to your point of, I remember when the light bulb kind of first hit for me on buying businesses. I was also kind of thought, a business is just this autonomous thing that
Yeah.
exists, that like no one can put your hand and just like, reach into
Yeah.
a pot and grab it out. Right.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, like once that was, taken away, the next layer was, well, like, I don't have, $7 million in the bank to just go buy a business. Like, how do I do
Mhm.
this? And then you learned about the SBA loan, and you're like, oh, wow, you're telling me I can finance, 70% of this thing. The business is cash flowing.
Yeah.
It's going to pay for that. I can pay some investors back. I'll be able to pay myself, a pretty good salary, and then also take some money from the net income at the end of the year.
Yep.
What? Like that's
Yeah.
I could just do that.
Yeah.
It
And
feels
then
almost
even
illegal sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, and then even going back to the SBA piece, it's like, yeah, the SBA is a real thing, but then you're like, oh, there's a bank behind the SBA, but then you're like,
Right.
oh, there's a person behind the bank.
Yeah.
And these bankers are actually real people that you talk to, and it's not just fill out a questionnaire online and it's a yes or no. It's so relationship driven, and I think that's what draws me towards it is the people involved. I know people's names, not what company they're with or what equity
Yeah.
group they're right.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point. Where compared to, if I want a car loan, okay, I'm just going to go onto my bank's website, fill out a piece of paperwork, and I'm never going to engage with a single human being,
Yeah.
and going to get $50,000 in financing to buy a
Mm-hmm.
car, whatever. Okay,
Yep.
these types of relationships with bankers, very, 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 very different. Okay,
Yep.
it is very much a personal thing. They're going to do their due diligence on the business. They're going to want to look at the deal. There's definitely going to be some kind of objective mechanics behind the entire operation. But all the bankers that I've interacted with, they want me to start talking to them before I'm even thinking of potentially searching. They want to get
Right.
to know you beforehand, and then they want to start looking at your deals before you put an offer in. And then it's a lot of phone calls, FaceTimes. It is very, very much a personal connection. And I've also, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but this little corner of the market is it almost incestuous in a sense. Like as soon as you know one person, you're 2 to 3 points of contact away from kind of like
Yeah.
anyone else operating in
So
this world.
true.
Yeah.
So true. Which before you actually start doing it, it doesn't seem like that's reality. But everybody knows everybody. I've been, dabbling in this world for a handful of months. And I say like not even close to full time. And I've met so many people through other people. Um, it's wild to me. It's still crazy how accessible people are and how everybody knows everybody. Um, and no one's actually in the same town as each other, right? So it's
Right. Right.
weird.
Right. Yeah. It's totally all just internet connections. Well, talk to me a little bit about your strategy. Like, are you partnering with anyone? What kind of business are you looking for? Geographically, just kind of curious, like what the mechanics and process for you are right now.
Yeah. So um, it's going to be me and two other partners. I'll kind of be in the providing the capital seat and a hands-off 10,000-foot view, little bit of a value add investor, kind of in the holding company chair. And then I will have a operating partner who will be in the day to day. And then I will have a third party who will be more of a mentor, advisor, super hands on with some skin in the game, who's done it a handful of times. So, wanted to make sure that there was somebody, looking out for our best interests, and somebody who's done it a bunch of times, with some skin in the game. I think really checks that box for me and makes me comfortable moving forward, knowing that I can't drop what I'm doing, in the
Right.
middle of the season to go save a business.
Right. Right. What do you have any types of businesses you're all searching for? There's certain industries you're trying to get into, things you don't touch.
Yeah, so we're very industry agnostic right now. This the search game is all about numbers. So our lead funnel isn't full right now, so we have to be pretty broad. And then as we continue to move forward with the search and the lead funnel fills up and we can't process everything that's coming in, we'll really tie some stuff down. But we want to look for blue and white collar services is, I guess I would say, in our alley. But send any sims our way.
Always a good policy to take.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm kind of taking the same approach for everyone listening right now. So I recently got married. My wife is from New Orleans, and when you're married to a woman from New Orleans, then the next question is always, when are you moving back to New Orleans?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking really just around New Orleans, pretty tight geography, and because of that. that's like a pretty major filter to place on, looking for businesses. I then take away pretty much industry, right?
Yeah.
Of, okay, if I'm going to constrain myself geographically and also size wise, the size business I'm looking for, there's only so many out there in that category, and only so many out there, even in that category, that are, primed to be sold. And so I took away the industry focus. I tell people I don't touch retail and non-franchise restaurants just because I don't know anything about running either of those operations.
Yeah.
Um, Not that I know anything about running, a oil field rental business, but I feel more confident running that than I do, a custom bakery or something like that.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. 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 So
Yeah. No, we're doing the same thing, man. We're looking at a size. We need a certain threshold. We're looking at around 750 in EBITDA, and it's a floating scale too. If someone came with a 715,000 EBITDA business, I'm
right.
not going to say can't touch it because our one pager says 750 plus. We just think around that number is the juice is worth the squeeze, and there should be some type of management in place. And if there's a brick and mortar type of company that we buy, that's really tied to its location. We want it to be within like a 2 or 3 hour drive of Orlando, just in case things go a little sideways, and there needs to be a ownership presence there every day.
Yeah. And for people who might be kind of new to this idea, or I'm sure some of you are maybe going through this process, the number Jeff threw out. So 750 to 1.5 million EBITDA, like that's the range I'm looking in. Okay. And you'll hear a lot of people who are looking for a business fall somewhere in those numbers. Those are numbers you're going to hear quite often. And the kind of typical thought process is, okay, that size business, one, like pretty healthy business. Like if you have that, that much in, there's don't know EBITDA, earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it's pretty rough estimate of cash flow to the business. Okay, good equivalent terminology for it. All right. So one, like you're making pretty good money on this thing already. Like it's a good, stable business. At that
Yep.
size, you probably also have at least like one layer of management. Okay. So, if you think in that business, there's probably some people, that your entry level employees are, turning wrenches, driving trucks, stocking shelves, whatever it is. And then at that size, you probably have at least one layer of supervisors,
Yep.
managers, office managers, something like that, right? So you have some people who are managing the day-to-day operations, and that way you, as the person who's acquiring the business, can step in and have more of that executive oversight type function versus being the person who's
Yeah.
pointing to the guy with the lawnmower to tell him to go to that corner over there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thought process is, come in and be the guys that work on the business and not in the business, and that's another phrase that I hear often is, work on the business, not in the business. And like you said, with the people that are already there, you should be able to do that for the most part. Obviously things come up, all situations are going to be different, stuff happens, and that's the nature of the business. But yeah, it's big enough but small enough, and it's a real company. You're not buying a hobby or a side gig. Like that
Right.
size company, a real company.
Yeah, and just because we kind of touched on the working on, not in dynamic. So I was listening to you listen to Acquisitions Anonymous at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. One of my faves kind of have on in the background when I'm working during the day. So if anyone who's interested, very much in buying businesses, I highly recommend listening to Acquisitions Anonymous. Three guys, I think it's three, who've done like
Yep.
a ton of deals in this space, and they're all small business owners, and basically what they do is every episode they look at a deal and just kind of
Yeah.
talk through like what buying and operating this business would look like. Anyway, I think the last episode I was listening to them, they kind of made a point of, like, hey, listen, like, I own multiple businesses, I've got a holding company, I've got my fingers in a lot of pots, and still every once in a while, like, I need to go up on the roof and put some nails in, or be the person stocking items in the shelf, or whatever it is. Like that
Yeah.
still happens at that level. um
Yeah.
it's hard to totally remove yourself from that. Like you got to be ready to jump in and act when it happens.
Yeah, you definitely got to be willing to do some of the dirty work every once in a while, because it's gonna happen. Obviously the less the better, but it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, how are you all going about, trying to find deals right now? You're mostly going through brokers, are you, reaching out to owners? What's the process like?
Both. So, being a group of three people that are looking for business, we have an advantage to, just in bandwidth. And so we're going to brokers, we're going direct to seller, and each individual person on the team has a different role in that. So we're making sure that we're taking advantage of having more people on the team.
Yeah, yeah. So for people who aren't familiar, go to a broker. People, if they're selling their business, they go to a broker to try and list it and everything. And like that's a fairly straightforward process. If you've ever bought a house or something, you've a person there who's kind of managing the process and then the relationship and everything. Um, what's the approach when you're approaching, a non-broker listing? Like how do you just, call up a number and say, hey, my name's Jeff. Can I buy your business?
Yeah. So let me just touch on the broker piece really fast. Before I like knew anything about this world, I kind of thought that the brokers would want to, if someone says, "Hey, I want to buy a business," my assumption would be the broker's like, "Oh man, that's awesome! Like, I got this business. Like, I'm gonna try to sell it to you." That's not the case. Like, as a searcher, you have to sell yourself to the broker. That hey, like, I'm worth your time. I'm not kicking tires. I have committed capital and I'm willing to move on this now. And I'm a qualified operator. So you have to sell yourself
Right.
because these brokers are getting up all the time and they want to make sure that they're bringing their deal to the right buyer and doing right by their seller.
Right.
Um, Going back to the direct to owner, yeah. So I live in Orlando. I do some marketing with small business owners, like just when I see them, hey, I'm Jeff, and I'm looking to buy businesses in the next 5 to 10 years. Keep me in mind, type of deal. But I mean, there's a lot of ways to figure out who you want to go after. A lot of it has to do with the number of employees, and you can find that stuff online. It's a pretty good proxy of how much money these companies are bringing in, and then it's email, it's direct mail, and you just have to be consistent with it.
I think that point about the employee count is such a small but like very very smart tactical way to figure out kind of the rough proxy of a business.
Mm.
If you go into a company's website and they've got a picture of the whole company and you see 100 people there, okay, it's probably a little too big for like this
Yeah,
size that we're talking about here. Or if you go on their
yeah,
LinkedIn page and they say about we have 250 employees, okay, probably a little bit too big for you, right?
yeah,
But if you go and it's a company picture with 8 to 10 folks or something like that, okay. Now we're talking like
yeah.
maybe that's the size business you're looking for. Um, I always like to, usually a good profile of a seller too is someone who's a little older, retiring, ready to kind of just hang up the boots and ride off into the
Yeah.
sunset. So I'll look for pictures of the owner and see, okay, do they have gray hair? Like how old does this person look right now too? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that's real. There's the danger of spending a bunch of time with the seller that you think is a seller, and in reality, they just want to figure out how much their business is worth,
Right.
and they never had any intention to sell. So that's a really good point with looking for somebody a little bit older who might have a little bit more motivation to get a liquidity event.
Yeah. And I mean, the other great part of that is, maybe they built this business from the ground up. Their kids don't want to take it over and they don't want to shut the doors, right? Like they're ready to retire. They're a little older. They're ready to cash it in. But they got employees still in the business. They got customers they want to take care of. And like they want to see this thing continue on, and keep thriving and would love to hand it off to, someone young and hungry and ready to, crush it over the next 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's you hit it head on. Just going back to kind of your marketing and your outreach. Um, one of the biggest things is just differentiating yourself. I kind of have a little bit of a built-in advantage. The NFL Shield like gets me in a lot of doors, but a lot of your viewers and listeners are veterans. People love that. People like, they hear that you're a military vet, and it automatically brings a sense of this guy's a quality guy, and I would definitely leverage that. Um,
100%.
when yourself.
I was talking to a broker once, and he was like, honestly, I'm more impressed by your time in the military than I am your MBA. Like that's more impactful in this small business world. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, well, awesome. Well, Jeff, I think we're kind of winding down to the last few minutes of the show here, and I want to be respectful of your morning because I'm sure you're going to work out after this.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
so in a minute, I'm going to pass it over to you. Just provide any last thoughts, parting shots, words of wisdom. Okay. But there's a question I always ask my guests. And so I always ask my veteran guests what their favorite chow hall in the military was. But for you, I'm actually super curious. What's the best NFL meal, like at training camp or stadium or whatever?
Yeah, no, they treat us really well. We eat well. It's part of fueling your body and making sure you're ready to go is eating well. And when I was with the Broncos, there was this is going to sound really crazy that this is what we were eating in the facility, but it was pistachio crusted Chilean sea bass, and that was like a lunch
Oh,
on a Thursday. It was
oh,
unbelievable. So when my wife Taryn, when I would tell her that that's what's for lunch, she said, get a bunch of to go boxes. So we filled up the fridge at home with the sea bass.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you'd be surprised especially in the special operations world, they get some super nice chow halls. My
Good.
last training assignment, like literally like my last couple of weeks in the army, I was on a training exercise with one of the SEAL teams, and like they brought their own chefs and everything. And I was eating like a king for three
Yeah.
weeks. It was awesome. I was
Nice.
like, man, you guys are killing it right now. Love it.
Encouraging. I'm happy to learn that. I
Yeah,
would have thought
yeah.
opposite.
Well, I mean, there's trust me, there's very much the opposite end of the spectrum as well. But there's definitely some places that put a high priority on quality food and nutrition. That's for sure. Awesome, man. Jeff, I really appreciate you coming tonight. Super fun talking to you, man, and just connecting and everything. So I just want to pass it back over to you for any last thoughts, parting shots you want to give out to the crowd.
Yeah. I'm the type of guy who like wants a process. I want to, best practice. If you do this, this and that, you will buy a business or you will, you know, throw for 20 touchdowns or 40 touchdowns or whatever it might be. And I've talked with people who are, in your shoes who are looking to buy a business. And I've talked with people who have bought 50 businesses. And it's very much there's no silver bullet. It's hey, go make relationships, pick up the phone, Google stuff and figure it out along the way. Rather than you have to do X amount of steps or do this, and that in order to get a business. It's very much put in the time, put in the work, figure it out along the way, and do the best you can. If you're doing it with good people, you'll figure out a way to come out the other end.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, um, there's not a formula and a checklist to just go through and make this thing happen. It is a very windy, undefined road, but I have confidence that many people listening to the show can make it happen. Well, Jeff, really appreciate you coming on, man. Ton of fun talking to you. And can't wait to stay abreast of your acquisition journey and your NFL career too. So super fun to stay in touch, man. Well, appreciate you coming
Yeah.
on. For everyone still listening, please like, subscribe, leave a review, and I'll see you all next week. Take care.
All right. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Absolutely.